You shall keep the Sabbath. For in 6 days God created the heaven and the earth, and on the seventh day he rested. That's the principle.
Yes.
There it is.
But now you're going to start doing what everybody else has done. You're ignoring the phases of the moon to count the days.
How's it going, everybody? Today we have an incredibly fascinating topic to discuss: the calendar. I've been wanting to dive into this topic for quite some time on this channel, but I wasn't sure how to attack it. This whole idea of lost history, lost time, it's incredibly fascinating to me. The thing is, the scale of this conversation is so incredibly massive, I didn't know where to start. You have the solar calendars like the Julian calendar, the Gregorian calendar, you have the lunar calendar, the solilunar calendar, you have the Enochian calendar, you have the Tartarian calendar. There's so many rabbit holes you can dive into that it's a bit overwhelming. So the way we're going to go about this is we'll dive into time through the lens of the Sabbath, the Lunar Sabbath and Saturday Sabbath, the way we know it today. Since it's new to me, we'll first take a look at the Lunar Sabbath with a presentation from World's Last Chance. Then we'll dive into the rebuttal and the defense of the Saturday Sabbath from Rabbi Nehemiah Gordon and Michael Rood. We'll end things with an incredibly fascinating discussion from Diane Covher, Zen Garcia, and Rob Skiba. To get things started and understand the idea of a lunar Sabbath, let's take a listen to this presentation from World's Last Chance.
Remember the Sabbath day, to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath. For people wanting to obey the Bible commandments, the question is, which is day one? All can count to 7, but where does the count begin? How can you know which is the true seventh day? The Creator who made the week also designed a month in which to place that week. The calendar of creation begins with New Moon Day, followed by 4 complete weeks. Each week contains 6 work days and a 7th-day Sabbath rest. In the beginning, the Creator designed the movement of the sun and the moon to measure time. Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons, religious gatherings, and for days and years. 2 great lights were set in the firmament of the heaven to rule over the day and over the night. Time can be measured only by movement. The movement of the sun measures a day. In 365¼ days, the sun and the earth return to the same relative position. This is 1 solar year. The moon's 29½ day rotation measures a lunation, which is the basis of the month. 12⅓ lunations are the same length as a solar year. There are 3 basic calendar formats using the movements of the sun and the moon. 1 solar, 2 lunar, 3 lunisolar. Number 1, solar, the measurement of the movement of Earth and Sun. Solar calendars use the sun for measuring the length of the year only. Months of arbitrary length have no link to nature. On the Gregorian solar calendar, weeks cycle continuously. Even leap day, every 4 years, does not disrupt the continuous weekly cycle. Lunar, the measurement of the moon's rotation. Lunar calendars are based strictly on the cycles of the moon. Months, which begin the first dawn after conjunction, cycle continuously without adjustment to the solar year. Because 12 lunations are 11 days shorter than a solar year, lunar months float through the seasons. Lunisolar, lunar months anchored to the solar year. The sun and the moon functioning together make a lunisolar calendar. Lunations are adjusted to the longer solar year by adding a 13th month 7 times in 19 years. The weekly cycle restarts with every new moon. Each lunation has 4 complete weeks. The calendar established at creation is lunisolar. It is the most accurate and precise of all timekeeping systems. In Scripture, each lunation starts with the celebration of a special day of worship, New Moon Day. New Moon Day starts with the first dawn after the astronomical new moon, also known as the conjunction. 6 workdays follow, and then a 7th-day Sabbath on the 8th of the month. 3 more weeks follow, ending on the 29th. Through measurement and calculation in the days leading up to the 29th, the time of conjunction is revealed so one can determine if the month has 29 or 30 days. No month ever has more than 30 days. The true lunisolar calendar is very user-friendly. Days of the week always fall on the same dates of the month. Every time a 7th-day Sabbath in Scripture is assigned a date, it always falls on the 8th, 15th, 22nd, and 29th days of the month. Scripture states that the moon was created specifically to measure times for worship. He created the moon for seasons, that is, worship times. Creation week ended with the Sabbath day's rest. Exodus 31 states that the Sabbath is to be kept throughout all generations. Verily my Sabbaths ye shall keep, for it is a sign between me and you throughout your generations, that ye may know that I am your Maker, that doth sanctify you. The 7th-day Sabbath was designed by the Creator to be the sign of loyalty between himself and his people. The enemy, Lucifer, has changed the civil calendar and stolen the worship due to the Creator. Through tradition and assumption, Lucifer has united the world in using a solar calendar with continuously cycling weeks. When one worships, reveals whom he worships. All who use a solar calendar for calculating their days of worship are unknowingly giving their allegiance and worship to the great deceiver. Those desiring to show their allegiance to the Creator will worship him on the day he has designated. To find the correct day of worship, the lunisolar calendar established at creation must be used. Scripture reveals that the calendar used for worship throughout all eternity will be based upon the new moon. And it shall come to pass that from one new moon to another, and from one Sabbath to another, shall all flesh come to worship before me. Whom do you worship? To whom do you give your allegiance? The calendar you use to measure time for worship reveals the deity you worship.
That was very interesting, and it's a lot to take in, but I have 2 questions. First one, God created the sun, moon, and stars on day 4, yet he rested on the 7th day. So that's 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so how are we calculating this? If he's resting on the 7th day, that means he's been counting since the first day before the moon was even created. So how does that work? Now, my other question is this. If we take a look at the calendar, it looks like there are certain weeks where we're going to have 8-day and 9-day weeks before the Sabbath, which should be the 7th day. Let's look at this right here. So the month ends on the 29th, which is the Sabbath, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then 8th is the Sabbath. That's the 8th day. I thought the Sabbath is supposed to be on the 7th day. Now again, let's jump to the last week. The Sabbath is on the 29th. So you have 30th, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, now 9. Now the Sabbath is the 9th day. God said the Sabbath day is the 7th day to commemorate his day of rest after his first 6 days of creation. If we look at World's Last Chance website, they do give us an explanation. Let me read it here. This solilunar calendar is based on each month, or lunation, beginning at dawn following the moon's conjunction with the sun. The first day of each month is called New Moon Day and is observed by abstaining from common labor and in worshipful consecration of oneself to Yahweh, the Creator. Each month consists of either 29 or 30 days. In the 30-day months, the last Sabbath is followed by Translation Day, then New Moon Day, both of which are not counted as part of any week. So that's how they're getting away with it. They're just not counting those extra days. Maybe I'm not seeing the full picture. Maybe I'm not understanding the logic here. Hopefully, the discussion that we have saved for the end of this video will explain things a lot better. But for now, let's dive into the rebuttal. Without further ado, here is Rabbi Nehemiah Gordon and Michael Rood.
The Lunar Sabbath is...
Yeah, if you don't follow us, you're going to hell. Going to hell, Nehemiah.
Well, so it's interesting. This Lunar Sabbath starts to show up in the 1990s. And I think one of the factors that brought it about, I think, was there's a Jewish encyclopedia that was out of copyright. And so someone had digitized it and put it on the internet. And so these people got a hold of this encyclopedia, Jewish encyclopedia from like 1901 or so, and they start to look at it. Now, what they didn't do is they didn't put the more updated Encyclopedia Judaica on the internet, because that came out in 1971, and it even now is still under copyright. So they put the outdated one. And the outdated one says about the Sabbath, it says it was probably originally connected in some manner with the cult of the moon, as indeed is suggested by the frequent mention of Sabbath and new moon festivals in the same sentence. They took that to mean that in the original Jewish calendar, the Sabbath was based on the moon. But if you look there, it says probably. Probably, okay, you tell me something's probable, what's that probability based on? Well, they explain this is a, quote, critical view. Now, in everyday daily speech, if I say critical, I mean something's really important. It's really vital. It's critical. My life depends on it. Yeah. But in scholarship, critical view means we're being critical of biblical tradition. Now, earlier in the same encyclopedia, they explain that according to the Bible, the new moon and the Sabbath go back to creation. And the Sabbath is actually this perpetual 7-day cycle all the way back to creation. With an unbroken, this is Shabbat Night Live. Friday night, Shabbat, that is, if you go back in time 7 days in increments of 7 days, you will reach the day that God rested after 6 days of creation. That is the biblical view.
And that is what the encyclopedia says, this very one, earlier
as
on.
The biblical view. Now, the critical view is, well, we don't believe the Bible.
That's
and what
right.
it's really, and it says this, you guys can read it for yourself. What that means, and what it even explains it means, is, well, if we don't believe it goes back to creation, if we don't believe it goes back to God resting on the 7th day after 6 days of making the world, then it must have some other origin. And what would be that origin?
Yeah,
the origin is in nature. And what's in nature? If you divide a lunar month by 4, you get increments of 7, not exactly, but close enough. And they said it must go back into some prehistory period, which isn't recorded in ancient Israelite sources because it's prehistory.
Right, there's no evidence of it ever being
There's no
on planet
evidence
Earth.
whatsoever, and it's a great contrast to the new moon. So the new moon today is based on a calculation of Hill II from 359 AD, and it's a very fair question to say, how do you know that? Well, I can show you the Jewish sources that predate 359 AD. If I open up to you the Mishnah, which was written down in the year 210, and I show you how they're still interrogating new moon witnesses, and they tell us in the time of the temple that the priests and the Pharisees had two rival courts, and there were witnesses that would go and testify in both courts. And there was a question of authority, but the two courts disagreeing on each other's authority didn't disagree that it was cited based on the sighting of the new moon. Now that tells you that in the 1st century, this is what the Jews were doing. Now show me the sources that date to the 1st century for the lunar Sabbath. They don't exist. They don't exist. All you can show me is an encyclopedia from 1901 that says probably and presents it as a critical view. And really, the question I ask is, why is this so popular in the Hebrew Roots movement? What do you think of it, Michael? Why is it so popular? Give it to me straight.
I think people are trying to divide up into little subcults to where their head rabbi, which Yeshua says, call no man, can fleece the flock and milk them.
I don't know. I want to give people the benefit of the doubt, but I hate to say it. With many of the people I've spoken to, and not all of them.
The Jews say it, it's got to be wrong.
There it is. That's what I've heard. Here's the way I've heard it presented.
And I have
by
heard
some
that
of those
many
people.
times,
Here's
too.
how I've heard it presented. These are people who come out of the church and they say, we were deceived about Sunday. Sunday is the day of worshiping the sun. And then we went to Saturday and found out Saturday was the day of worshiping Saturn. And I'm like,
yeah, in English.
In English? Not in Hebrew.
Not in Spanish, not in most languages.
Well, that's a good,
it's Sabbato. It's a Sabbath
point.
in just about every language on the planet except English.
So in Hebrew, Sunday has nothing to do with the sun. It's called Yom Rishon. Then we have Yom Sheni, Yom Shlishi, we have 1st day, 2nd day, 3rd day, 4th day, 5th day, 6th day, and the 7th day is called Yom Shabbat. The amazing thing about this is if you go to every Jewish community in the world, there was an ancient Jewish community in Kaifeng, China, which was cut off from the rest of the Jewish world for hundreds of years. They've got the same day of the week. They have the same 7-day cycle.
Right.
Go to the Jews of Ethiopia.
No communication around the world.
The Jews of the Ethiopia never had the Talmud, never had an oral law, and they have the same 7-day cycle. And the crazy thing is, not crazy, the beautiful thing is go outside of Judaism and you have the same 7-day cycle. Now, the Christians don't rest on Sunday, they don't rest on Saturday, they don't rest on Shabbat, but they will tell you Sunday is the 1st day of the week. And the 7th day of the week is Saturday, or in Spanish, Sabado. Go even to the Muslims, who their holy day is Friday. They call it Yom el-Jum'ah, the 7th day of the week. Sorry, the 6th day of the week. They'll tell you, yeah, the 7th day of the week is Yom el-Sabt. That was when the Jews rest, but we don't rest on that day. That was changed by their thing. So they all recognize when the 7th day of the week is, they just don't rest on it. But so the point is, this isn't just a Jewish tradition of one particular group. Every Jewish community in the world and every non-Jewish community in the world has the same 7-day cycle.
Let me say this. Yeshua kept the Sabbath, the same Sabbath as it is today. There's been no change from the 1st century, absolutely. So if he's any authority to the Christian world, then, okay, we got that nailed.
Okay, that's more along the lines of what I've always believed. It's pretty hard to believe that Jews all around the world somehow lost track of time and forgot when the Sabbath is. And they also made a very interesting claim about the recency of this Lunar Sabbath ideology. I don't know how accurate that is, but hopefully our final clip here will shed some more light on the situation. Without further ado, here is Rob Skiba, Zen Garcia, and Diane Covher.
God rested on the 7th day. So whatever day, however he figured out days for day 1, 2, 3 before the sun and moon showed up on day 4. From what I heard you say, I think it was today or yesterday, the time clock really starts with the moon, right? So is that then become a new day? Day 4 of creation, is that day 1?
No.
So your Sabbath has to still align with the original first Sabbath, correct?
Okay, first you gotta look at what I talked about, that there is the first Sabbath, not the first Sabbath, the first feast or appointed time that God set up is the Sabbath week. 6 days work and then the seventh. Now if he started the clock on the fourth day, that's really probably the 5th day of the month, because New Moon Day is the first day and it's not counted in the week. So that would be the 5th day. So then the 6th day would be the 5th day on the work week. 7th day would be the 6th day on the work week, and then the 8th day is the 7th day.
Okay, but going back to creation, do you still end up with the Sabbath on the same day that he did? The moon shows up on day 4.
That's what I just said.
I said, so let's work with this, because this is what I understand. I didn't understand anything you just
Okay,
said. So if we can work with these numbers, then you can correct my thinking here, because I understand what I wrote here. Is God starts here, rests here. Are you resting here also?
on the day he's resting?
Yes.
Yeah.
From the first week. Okay, so then does the moon start, was the moon created with the appearance of maturity of age as a day 4?
Probably,
Okay,
yeah.
so then this is your, this
Not
would
day
be,
4, day 5. It would be day 5.
how can that be if
If he is set, now, like I said, Shavuot shows it. You can't get around what he has set up.
Yeah, I don't wanna go that
okay?
far yet.
Yeah, I know.
Because I can't get to where you are until we figure this out.
I know.
Until I can figure this out,
The
I can't go
hardest
there.
part is when it has been pounded into our head that the week means 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Well, that's not what he's saying. He keeps referring back to what he did in the first week. 6 days God worked, and the 7th he rested. All right? So that's the first appointed feast. That means we go with that and go, well, it says right there in the beginning, okay, day 1 he did this. Well, yeah, but that was his day 1 of his work week. Okay, his work day. It wasn't necessarily the first day of the month. It was the first undefiled
Correct.
week.
No, I'm with you.
Okay.
I get you. I
the
get
same
you.
thing. A guy emailed her about 2 weeks ago. He said, how do you tie it to creation week?
That's
And
the biggest
what he-
problem.
that's
If
what
you
he-
can't tie your theory to creation week,
Okay,
and you gotta
here-
be able to describe that, because that's gonna be everybody's question.
Yes.
That I run into, and that's my question. Is
Okay, here-
whenever I do this, and are you assuming a 30-day month,
29 or 30, depending on when the moon comes out again.
29 or 30?
If there's a translation day.
Because the problem I run into when I do the math out like this is you consistently run into either 2 days that you don't do anything with, or you might consider that 2-day work week, so you're not working for 6 days before you run into a Sabbath. And sometimes you run to 7 and 8 even.
He's talking about the Kadeshes and the translations days. Like Kadesh is not.
Well, anybody that I've
Yeah.
talked to before, they say, well, those days don't count. They're invisible days. They're just.
They're not counted
And
in
like
the
my
7
brain
days.
checks out. I'm like,
No, no.
Yeah, I
Every
gotta work
single
6 days and
day
then rest on the 7th
on
day.
Yahweh's calendar is accounted for, every single day.
Okay.
There's a
Alright.
unique structure.
Yes.
You have to
it's-
understand that
it's the-
structure.
it's-
What Diane is saying is that when God started the calendar, it would start with the waxing crescent. That day would not be included in the creation week because it wasn't a work day. It's just the first day of the beginning of the month.
It's
And-
considered a worship day.
Yeah, the
With
new moon
sacrifices,
convocation.
yeah.
But Yahweh worked that day.
No, no.
He created that day.
He created the 6th work, that's what he kept reiterating in his word. 6 days he worked, the 7th he rested. That is a particular undefiled Sabbath week. He doesn't say anything about New Moon Day.
But the
He's
day
talking
he
about
breathed the
sixth-
world into existence was work for sure, right?
Yes, it was
Day
the
one.
first work day.
Adam showed up on day 6.
Yeah.
So if Adam showed up on day 6, and he knew day 7, because he's around for the first Sabbath, and God said, hey, it's my Sabbath, dude, let's chill, okay. Now you work for 6 days. Okay, Adam worked 6 days, boom, another Sabbath. 6 days, another Sabbath. This is my problem.
Yeah.
Is in what I'm hearing in your system, Adam's all wonked out right here. 28 days, he's like, I don't know what to do.
That's because you're going in continuous
I'm doing what God
7,
did.
6, 7.
Here,
Yeah, 6,
No,
7,
here's
6,
all
7.
this-
addressing the tide to creation week,
Yeah.
and I addressed this 2 weeks ago mentally, because I immediately, my first reaction was, you can't tie God's calendar that we see going back to creation week.
But he did.
Yes. And so, the whole thing is like, the first work day, the day before that, if he had had it in creation, would have been New Moon Day.
You're
So-
at day 0.
Yes, day 0 would have been New Moon Day. and
Which
then you
isn't a
start
work day.
counting. Huh?
Yeah,
It's not a work day.
right.
So you have 2 Sabbaths.
No, it's not a
No, it's a
Sabbath.
new moon
You
convocation.
Well,
can't
because
work
you run
on it.
into,
No.
there are times when you do this, I've done this out on really long spreadsheets, and there are times when you're doing the cycle and you end up with like, if you're doing 6 days and then a rest, 6 days rest, 6 days rest, boom, then new moon day, that's also a rest because you're doing a new moon day celebration.
No, it's not a
Moon day
rest.
is not a-
It's
So-
not a
so
Sabbath.
It's not a
Is it a work day?
Sabbath.
Going around
No, it's the
If
first
it's not a
day.
work day and it's not a rest day, you
Yes,
can't make it an
it's-
invisible day.
It's the first day of the lunar
It
month.
can be worked.
It's
They,
set.
they put the tabernacle up in the wilderness on that day. Joshua started his march around Jericho on
Right.
that
But
day.
what
on
I'm
that
saying
day.
is,
You can work
if
on
you,
it.
but,
It's-
and if you do that, because I've tried to figure that out too, you end up with, 7-day work weeks and an 8-day Sabbath.
No.
Yeah, you
Oh,
do.
yeah.
Because if
If
you're
you-
working
if
on
you
that
work on
day,
new
you
moon
can
day.
work, you can say you can't work or you don't work on it. It's not a Sabbath or it is a Sabbath. I don't know what it, it's an invisible day that doesn't make sense if I'm doing 6 days of work and a 7th day of rest.
Well, you have to understand the structure of the calendar because that first day is excluded from the 7-day counts of the working week. And then that's why you have on the 8th, the 15th, the 22nd, and the 29th, every month, those are the 7-day Sabbaths. Those are the days that actually have Sabbath. And the structure of the lunar month, every month you have 4 7-day Sabbaths. And
Yeah,
they
I've
align
seen
to
the calendar. I
phases
have your
of the month.
calendar.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
and I watched the World's Last Chance video series that they did, but I still get stuck with 2-day work weeks or 8-day work weeks, or I don't end up with a consistent 6th and 7th day.
Right, and that's true, and it's because
And that's where I can't.
The
I just,
Kadesh and the-
maybe I'm
So
stupid.
this
I
is
just
strictly,
can't go. I understand that. I understand the problem with the conjunction and when a new moon sliver can be sighted, and that can be
If
a
it's-
spread. But I don't know what the heck to do with the days or like in between here.
they all have a significant purpose. It isn't a Sabbath. God did not say, you cannot do any work on this first day of the month. But I have special sacrifices. You can, the temple will be open. You can come and worship. You can do what you want on that day. You can even work. But it's not a Sabbath. He's the one that set it up, how to follow the months. We don't, he can say, follow the Gregorian calendar. This is
I
May,
get the
June,
Gregorian,
July.
Julian, I don't care
Okay?
about any of that.
Yeah, what I'm saying is, we think that, okay, it's a new month because it says so on the calendar and this is the first day. Well, all you gotta do as the enemy is shift it a little bit enough to confuse people. God still starts
I'm
his
confused.
month. Yeah. God
I'm
still
totally
starts his
confused
month.
with 3 pieces of paper. I'm completely confused. Now the argument, because I have another friend of mine. We've had a lot of these conversations. He's been trying to convert me for a long time. His thing is like, look, a shepherd with a stick should be able to tell everything he needs to know. He should be able to look up, see the moon. He should be able to check the shadow and know what time of the year it is. He should be able to all that. He doesn't need anything. Everybody else is doing Sunday through Saturday, and you're presumably thinking Saturday is Sabbath. That's easy as long as you have your faculties to keep that in mind. And I understand that calendars have changed lots of dates, but in my research, I haven't seen any evidence that the understanding of the day, what day you are, where you are, we call it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, that hasn't changed.
the calendars used to be
Dates have changed. They've lost entire dates. Like
Aligned with the moon,
a bunch of numbers disappeared. Whoop, but you still knew today was Tuesday, even though the date number changed.
the ancient calendars were in line with the cycles and the phases of the moon, just like what God has established in the heavens and what I decrypted in the book of Enoch. There's that 354-day lunar calendar and a 364-day solar calendar, and there's the way that they intercalate together. And
That makes sense to me. It makes sense to me that I should be able to look at the moon and say, okay, day 1, but I can't get past mystery days. Okay, so let's pretend Monday night we see a crescent moon. Okay.
Well,
So
like-
Tuesday morning is new moon day, right? Monday night I saw a crescent. Tuesday morning is new moon day.
New moon day.
Is that day 1 of the month?
Yes.
Yes.
First work day.
No.
No.
It's checked out.
It's, okay, why do you have to call new moon day a work day?
Because I worked 6 days and rested the 7th. That's what God did.
Perpetual. You're saying it's
I'm
gotta
saying
be,
that
you're
if he
saying
started,
it's-
he started the
you're saying
cycle.
it's gotta be perpetual.
I'm saying
Otherwise
that's
you
what
won't
he said.
accept it.
No, I'm saying he starts day 1, and rest day 7. And he says, like he did so many times, Sabbath is always brought back for in 6 days, God created the heavens and the earth, and 7 days he rested. How many times we say keep the Sabbath 4 in 6 days?
You can't get around it being perpetual.
Yeah, it starts here.
You
And
can't
take
get
this
around
paper
the calendar
for
being
6,000 years going that way.
It's not
6 days,
perpetual
7.
because you got new moon day.
That's what
It's
translation
separate.
and
It's
translation
separate
days
from
and mystery days when you're looking for
his
crescent
perfect Sabbath week is
conjunction.
not new moon day. New moon day is separate from his perfect Sabbath week.
Yeah, that's where I'm at.
Okay, new moon day is not part of the 4 Sabbath, the 4 consecutive weeks in the month. It's a day all by itself. That's why Father put special sacrifices on it, all right? And on the 29th day, which is the last Sabbath, we look for the moon again. If the sliver is found on that last day, then the next day is what?
New moon day.
New moon day. So you had 29 days in that month. If the sliver is not found in Jerusalem, we believe, then you add a 30th day, okay? It's not part of the perfect Sabbath weeks that you count for Shavuot.
Of course not. It messes your math up.
No, your math.
My math is, I got
Your math-
spreadsheets,
your-
dude.
You
1,
want,
2, 3.
in your mind, you want perpetual.
Yeah.
You want perpetual.
Of course I do. 6 days he works, 7 days
Consider
rests.
this
Count 6
too.
more days.
It's gotta be perpetual.
Consider this, that when you look up into the heavens, and you see the clockwork system and the mechanism of it that God has established in the creation, that Sabbath, there's a reason why the moon has this 7-day phases. And it is in line with the Sabbath. And so God has put the moon there to, determine the beginning of the months and also the alternating 29 and 30-day months. And it's actually the perfect calendar. I mean, the way he established the moon to determine
It's
every
perfect.
lunar
You
month
said
is
it.
incredibly...
Okay.
It's
You're gonna do
perfect
this?
except for that.
If you're gonna do this, you totally ignore. If you get into the 2nd month, okay, you're having trouble here, but by the time you get into the 2nd month, you are totally out of
That's what I
sync
told
with
you.
the moon.
Right here.
No,
This is I'm on page 2.
No, you didn't hear what I said.
Completely off.
You are totally out of sync with what the moon is doing.
But I'm
You've
not
got
out of
to
sync with
follow-
what creation is.
He wants perpetual.
That is out of sync because the moon
Hey
is
Adam,
created.
you showed up yesterday.
Just to
Rest with me
keep
today.
everything
Boom.
in
You
line
work for
with
6
the-
days starting tomorrow.
So-
And then you rest with me
Yeah,
next
it
week.
keeps
Okay,
everything
now-
in
But
line.
it doesn't say
Sabbath's
that.
in line with the quarterly
That's what
phases.
the whole creation.
That's your assumption that that's what happened. It's only talking about the
You
first
shall
week.
keep the Sabbath. For in 6 days God created the heaven and the earth, and on the 7th day He rested. That's the principle.
Yes.
There it is.
But now you're going to start doing what everybody else has done. You're ignoring the phases of the moon to count the days. When you get to the end of a month and you keep on going with your perpetual, the moon's left behind.
There's
it no
no
longer is in sync
correlation.
with it.
I know. You're on page 2 and you're out of why.
Yeah.
Right.
You've got to stay
But
in
there's a
sync.
reason why.
Well, you got to
God
do a better
established
job
it
of
that way.
enunciating how because what you're saying makes sense to me. If I ignore this, if I throw this out the window, that makes sense. The problem is the commandment is tied to that.
No, it works with that too, but you're just not taking into consideration the new moon day is something that is not part of the first creation and work week. You want the new moon day to be day 1 and you work, but that's not it. You have to have that before
No.
we get to the 6 days of the working week.
What's a story with David where he's waiting?
Same with the Jasher story of, the whole thing of the march. You have to understand that Kadesh is something separate, but that they could still work and do stuff on it.
Who was it that her son died and she ran to get Elijah after he had healed her son and he died in the field? And she gets up and she heads out. What does her husband say to her? Where are you going? I'm going to go see the prophet. Well, it's neither Sabbath nor new moon day. Why are you
Right,
seeing them? Okay,
right.
so they connected the new moon day with being able to do special things, whether it's talking with the prophet or going to the temple. But her husband was out there working. Okay, so there was a specialness to that day, but it was not part of where this is it. The doors are now closed. It's our work time. Because the doors of the temple are open on Sabbath and New Moon Day. But on the work days, it's closed. So if we're going to do our special things, we do it on those days to God.
Okay, that was incredibly interesting to watch. Essentially what they're saying is the cycles of the moon dictate when the Sabbath is. Therefore, you can't follow the solar calendar. The Julian calendar, the Gregorian calendar, that gets thrown out of the window. But then, as Rob Skiba said, as a lot of you say, as I say, what about 6 days of work, 7th day rest? 6 days of work, 7th day rest. Because you need to, in order for the lunar Sabbath to work, you need to introduce the new moon day and the translation day, as they said. So now, my question is, are the cycles of the moon supposed to dictate the Sabbath? Or do they dictate Sabbaths? Because there's a difference between a Sabbath and the Sabbath. Because remember, Sabbath means a day of rest, a ceasing from your everyday work. The Sabbath is set apart from every day. It is not just a ceasing from work, it is a holy day. God said, make the Sabbath day holy. Keep the Sabbath day holy. So maybe the moon is only intended to dictate those other Sabbaths. There's so much more to dive into this topic. There's so many more questions that I can ask, and I've already crammed so much into this one video. I would absolutely love to do follow-up videos diving deeper into this topic, but let me know all of your thoughts. What do you think about all of this? Do you see where the Lunar Sabbath people are coming from, or do you still find yourself firmly in the Saturday Sabbath camp? Let me know all of your thoughts down below in the comment section, and I'll see you all in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.